I've been having some trouble getting this to work. My first attempt was to assign the segment variables based on naming conventions. Then duplicate the worm when a body piece is killed and destroy the extra segments from both halves. However, I was having lots of bugs, like multiple heads on one body and others without a tail. I could probably fix it, but the code is already getting convoluted, so I decided to procedurally generate it instead. That way I can spawn worms of different lengths without changing the template. I reset the skeleton to its rest position. Also change the head and jaw polygons into sprites, and attach it directly to the bones. I save the head bone as a new scene and remove it from the worm skeleton. Then save the last body bone with its remote transform. I also export the body polygon and head and body collision shapes. Then I delete everything but the tail, change the base node to a rigid body, and attach a blank script. I preload the head and body bone scenes and add a build function that takes the number of segments. I'll just add the bones for now to demonstrate. Initialize the previous bone to the tail. For each segment, add a new instance of the body bone as a child of the previous. Then set previous to the current bone to make a cascading structure. Add the head at the end after the loop completes. I already have a space worm in the main scene, so I call build with a body count of 4 on ready. As expected, it spawns a head and tail with a gap of 4 segments in between. Then I make a worm segment class extending collision shape. Add variables for the bone, polygon, previous, and next segments. The setNext function sets the segment and calls setPrevious on next. I pass a false flag so it doesn't get stuck in a loop. setPrevious does the inverse. I also add a function to update the remote transform so the collision shape is centered on the bone. This gets the node and sets the remote path. Then call it again on the next segment so the whole worm is updated. I attach scripts to the head, body, and tail collision shapes extending worm segment. In head, I override update remote transform since it doesn't have a next segment. In the space worm script, preload the head and body shape scenes. In build, set the bone on the tail and make it the previous segment. For each body, make an instance of the shape scene and set the bone. Then call setPrevious and add it as a child of the worm. Do the same for the head and call update remote transform on the tail to align the collision shapes. Now you can see the 4 segments in the middle with visible collision shapes enabled. It moves slightly when I bounce off since I changed it to a rigid body. In the worm segment base class, I add a function to set the X position of the polygon so it lines up with the skeleton. The value is set to 0 by default. I call it again on the next segment with the position incremented by 160. In the head class, override with an empty function since I'm using a sprite instead. In the space worm class, preload the body polygon scene and set the polygon on the tail. For each body, make a new instance and add it to the polygons node. At the end, call setPolygonX on the tail to draw the scales. Now I can increase the body count to 14 in the main class, and it generates a much longer worm. I'll add the health bars and splitting mechanic next time. Thank you for watching this Derp Star update, and have a great day!